The stars belonged to the Varathians, and they had belonged to them for 300 years. Every species in the galaxy knew this truth. The Varathian Empire stretched across 2,000 star systems, and their warships numbered in the tens of thousands. When the Varathians wanted something, they took it. When they gave an order, species obeyed. This was the way of things, and nobody questioned it anymore. The Galactic Council met in a massive station that floated between stars, far from any single world. Representatives from 47 different species gathered in the Great Chamber, but everyone knew the truth. The Council existed to make Varathian commands sound like agreements. The representatives would debate and discuss, but in the end, they would vote exactly as the Varathians wanted. Those who voted differently found their worlds facing economic sanctions, blockades, or worse. The Varathian delegate was a tall creature named High Chancellor Vexith. His species stood on two legs like many intelligent races, but their skin was thick and gray like stone. Their eyes glowed with a faint red light, and when they spoke, their voices rumbled like distant thunder. Vexith sat in the largest chair in the council chamber, elevated above all others. This was not official protocol, but nobody dared suggest he move. On this particular day, Vexith had called the council together for an announcement. The other delegates sat in their assigned seats, waiting. Some species whispered to each other nervously. Others sat in silence, their various forms of faces showing resignation. They all knew what was coming. The Varathians had found another world to conquer. Honorable members of the council, Vexith began, his voice filling the chamber without need for amplification. The Empire has made a discovery that will benefit all species under our protection. Our long-range scout ships have located a new world in the outer regions of the galaxy. The planet is designated as Sol 3 by our navigation systems, though the primitive inhabitants call it Earth. The delegates leaned forward slightly. A new world always meant new resources, new labor, new tribute flowing to the Empire. Some species might receive small portions of the wealth, if they pleased the Varathians enough. Vexith continued. Initial scans show the planet is rich in mineral resources and supports a thriving biosphere. More importantly, it is inhabited by an intelligent species that calls themselves humans. However, our intelligence division has completed a full assessment, and the results are amusing. He activated a holographic display in the center of the chamber. Images appeared, showing a blue and green world orbiting a yellow star. The planet looked beautiful, covered in oceans and clouds. Then the display zoomed in, showing cities, vehicles, and the inhabitants themselves. As you can see, Vexith said with something that might have been a smile, the humans are a remarkably primitive species. They have only recently begun to venture beyond their own planet. Their fastest ships use chemical combustion for propulsion. Chemical combustion, like burning wood to create movement. They have managed to place a few individuals on their own moon, which they consider a great achievement. Several delegates made sounds that might have been laughter in their various languages. Chemical rockets were the kind of technology most species abandoned thousands of years ago. It was like discovering a civilization that still used stone tools. Furthermore, Vexith continued, the humans have no unified planetary government. They are divided into nearly 200 separate political entities, many of which are in conflict with each other. They fight wars over resources, territory, and ideology. Their largest weapons are crude nuclear devices that split atoms, effective for destroying each other perhaps, but utterly useless against modern shielding technology. The display showed more images. Human cities, human vehicles, human spacecraft that looked fragile and small. To the assembled species, who traveled between stars and commanded energy weapons, the humans looked like children playing with toys. The Empire has decided, Vexith announced, that Sol 3 and its surrounding system will be incorporated into Varathian territory. The humans will be given the opportunity to surrender peacefully and become a productive member of the Empire. If they refuse, they will be subdued through standard military protocols. Fleet Admiral Kreth has been assigned to lead the 7th Subjugation Fleet to the Sol system. A hologram of Admiral Kreth appeared next to the images of Earth. Kreth was even larger than Vexith, his armor covered in decorations that marked centuries of military service. His red eyes burned brighter than most Varathians, a sign of his enhanced combat biology. Kreth had personally overseen the subjugation of 9 separate civilizations. He had never failed a mission, The Seventh Fleet consists of 847 warships, Vexith said. This includes 6 dreadnoughts, 42 battleships, 150 cruisers, and various support vessels. Standard protocol for a pre-FTL civilization is typically 100 ships. However, Admiral Kreth has requested additional forces to ensure a proper demonstration of Imperial might. The humans should understand, immediately and completely, that resistance is impossible. The delegate from Thaxia, a small insectoid species, raised one of its forearms. High Chancellor, if I may ask, is such a large fleet necessary for a species that cannot even travel faster than light? It seems excessive. Vexith's eyes fixed on the Thaxian, and the delegate immediately lowered its arm. The size of the fleet is not only about military necessity, delegate. It is about sending a message to all species in the galaxy. The Empire's power is absolute. Our resources are unlimited. We can afford to send nearly 1,000 warships to subjugate a primitive world because we have tens of thousands more. Let every species remember this lesson. The Thaxian delegate said nothing more. Around the chamber, other representatives shifted uncomfortably. The message was clear. The Varathians could overwhelm any opposition with pure numbers, even when fighting an enemy that posed no real threat. The operation will begin in 3 standard weeks. Vexith continued. The Seventh Fleet is currently assembling at Staging Point Gamma. Admiral Kreth has estimated the entire operation will take less than 1 planetary rotation of Earth. The humans will see our ships arrive. They will receive our ultimatum, and they will surrender. If they are foolish enough to resist, their military capabilities will be eliminated within hours. Then, we will proceed with standard integration protocols. Standard integration protocols. Every species in the chamber knew what that meant. The humans would be forced to dismantle most of their military. Their resources would be cataloged and taxed. Their labor would be directed toward imperial projects. Their culture would be allowed to exist only as long as it did not conflict with Varathian interests. Within a generation, Earth would be just another subjugated world, its people just another population serving the Empire. This council session will remain open, Vexith announced. All member species will have access to live feeds from the Seventh Fleet during the operation. Admiral Kreth has graciously agreed to broadcast the entire subjugation so that the galaxy may witness Varathian efficiency. I expect all delegates to watch and to share these broadcasts with their home governments. Let this serve as a reminder of the Empire's strength and the futility of resistance. With that, Vexith stood and left the chamber. The other delegates remained seated for a moment, processing what they had heard. Then, slowly, they began to leave as well, returning to their quarters to send messages to their homeworlds. The Thaxian delegate met quietly with the delegate from Draxus, a species of mammalian creatures with thick fur and sharp teeth. They stood in a side corridor, away from the main traffic of the station. "Do you think the humans know?" the Thaxian asked quietly. "Do they have any idea what is coming for them?" The Draxian shook its head sadly. How could they? They barely understand that other intelligent species exist. They have been shouting into the void with their radio transmissions for decades, hoping someone might answer. Now someone has answered, and it is the worst possible response. "I feel pity for them," the Thaxian said. "They seem so hopeful in their transmissions. They speak of peace and cooperation between species. They dream of a united galaxy working together for common good. Then they are fools," the Draxian replied, though there was sadness in its voice. "The galaxy is not a place of cooperation. It is a place of dominance and submission. The Varathians dominate, and the rest of us submit. That is reality. The humans will learn this lesson, as we all did. At least they might survive," the Thaxian said. "The Varathians do not usually exterminate species that surrender quickly. If the humans are wise, they will accept the first ultimatum." "Perhaps," the Draxian agreed. "But I have studied their transmissions. Humans are a stubborn species. They fight among themselves constantly, but they also have a strong sense of pride. They might do something foolish. They might resist. Then they will die," the Thaxian said simply. 847 Varathian warships against chemical rockets and nuclear weapons? It would not be a battle. It would be an execution. The two delegates parted ways, each returning to their quarters to compose messages to their governments. Throughout the station, similar conversations were happening. Some species felt pity for the humans, some felt relief that the Vorithians were focused elsewhere. A few felt anger at the injustice of it all, but kept their feelings hidden. Anger against the Empire was dangerous. In the highest levels of the station, in a secure command center that only Vorathians could access, High Chancellor Vexith met with Admiral Kreth via holographic communication. Kreth's image stood in the center of the room, life-sized and imposing. "The Council has been informed," Vexith reported. "They will watch the operation as required." Some expressed sympathy for the humans, but nobody objected to the annexation. "Of course they did not object," Kreth replied. "They fear us too much." "As they should. Have you reviewed my operational plans?" "I have. The fleet strength seems more than adequate. I approved your request for additional ships because I agree with your reasoning. This operation should be a demonstration of overwhelming force. Let the galaxy see what happens to species that cannot defend themselves." Kreth nodded. "The 7th Fleet will arrive in the Sol system in exactly 3 weeks. We will emerge from hyperspace near the 4th planet, which the humans call Mars. From there, we will transmit the standard ultimatum in all major human languages. I have studied their communication systems. They use something called Internet, a primitive network that connects their entire planet. We will broadcast directly to every human device, simultaneously." "What do you expect their response to be?" Vexith asked. "Complete panic," Kreth said with satisfaction. "Their governments will scramble to communicate with us. There will be confusion, disagreement about how to respond. Some will want to fight, but their military leaders will quickly realize they have no chance. Within 6 hours, perhaps less, a surrender will be offered. If not, we will begin systematic destruction of military installations. They will surrender after losing a few bases. And if they continue to resist," Kreth's eyes glowed brighter, "then we will begin orbital bombardment of their largest cities. One destroyed city will be enough. They will surrender immediately after that. Humans are emotional creatures. According to our psychological profiles, they will not sacrifice their civilian populations for a war they cannot win." "Excellent," Vexith said. "Remember, Admiral, this operation is being broadcast to the entire galaxy. Make it clean, make it efficient, and make it terrifying. I want every species to watch and to understand that the Empire is invincible. It will be done, High Chancellor. The 7th Fleet will bring glory to the Empire. The humans will become a footnote in our history. Just another primitive species that learned to kneel before Vorithian power." The holographic communication ended. Vexith stood alone in the command center, looking out through a massive window at the stars beyond. Somewhere out there, the humans continued their lives, unaware that their fate had been decided. In 3 weeks, their world would change forever. Vexith felt no guilt about this. The galaxy operated on simple principles. The strong dominated the weak. The advanced controlled the primitive. The Empire took what it wanted because it had the power to do so. This was natural law, played out on a galactic scale. The humans would learn this lesson soon enough, and the rest of the galaxy would watch and remember why they served the Empire without question. 3 weeks. That was all the freedom Earth had left. The Vorathian 7th Fleet emerged from hyperspace like a dark cloud spreading across the sky. 847 warships materialized near Mars, their hulls reflecting the distant light of the sun. Each ship was massive, built for war and intimidation. The smallest vessels were the size of human aircraft carriers. The largest dreadnoughts stretched over 5 kilometers from bow to stern, bristling with weapons that could crack planets. On the bridge of the flagship Eternal Dominion, Fleet Admiral Kreth stood before the main view screen, watching the red planet Mars grow larger as his fleet assumed formation. Around him, dozens of Vorithian officers worked at their stations, coordinating the movements of hundreds of ships with practiced efficiency. The bridge was a cathedral of military power, its ceiling rising 20 meters above the deck, its walls covered in tactical displays. "Fleet formation complete, Admiral," reported the tactical officer. "All ships report ready status. No damage from hyperspace transition. Scan the system," Kreth ordered. "Full spectrum analysis. I want to know the location of every human vessel, every satellite, every installation. Leave nothing unobserved." The sensor officer worked at her console, directing the fleet's scanning arrays toward the inner system. "Scanning now," Admiral, initial results show multiple artificial satellites around the third planet. Primitive communication and observation platforms. We are detecting chemical rocket launches from the surface. Seems to be routine cargo deliveries to a small orbital station. No military vessels detected beyond the planet's immediate orbital space. Kreeth nodded. This matched intelligence projections exactly. The humans had managed to place a small station in orbit around their world. But they had no deep space navy, no patrol ships, no early warning network beyond their primitive satellites. They were blind to threats from beyond their own moon. Open a channel to the Galactic Council, Kreeth commanded. All frequencies. Let them witness this moment. Across the galaxy, on the Council Station and on the homeworlds of 47 species, view screens activated. Billions of beings watched as the Varathian fleet hung in space near Mars, a display of overwhelming military might. In the council chamber, delegates took their seats, preparing to witness what they assumed would be a quick and inevitable subjugation. Channel open, Admiral, the communications officer reported. Attention, species of Earth, Kreeth began, his voice being translated simultaneously into 17 human languages by Vorathian computers. I am Fleet Admiral Kreeth of the Vorathian Empire. Your world has been selected for incorporation into Imperial territory. You will immediately cease all military activities and prepare to receive occupation forces. You have 6 hours to transmit your unconditional surrender. If you comply, your species will be integrated peacefully into the Empire. You will be protected, governed, and put to productive use. Resistance will be met with complete military destruction. You cannot win. You cannot escape. You can only choose how you wish to survive. Comply and live. Resist and face extinction. You have 6 hours. The transmission ended. On the bridge of Eternal Dominion, the officers waited for the human response. Based on psychological profiles, the humans would need at least an hour to process what was happening, to organize their governments, to debate their options. Kreeth expected panic transmissions, requests for clarification, desperate pleas for more time. The response came in 2 minutes. A single transmission, audio only, from something called NORAD Combined Space Command. The voice was human, male, speaking in English with a flat, emotionless tone. Negative. Maintain position beyond lunar orbit or be engaged. This is your only warning. NORAD out. For a moment, the bridge of Eternal Dominion was silent. The officers looked at each other in confusion. Then Kreeth began to laugh, a deep rumbling sound that echoed through the chamber. Did you hear that? He asked his crew. They threatened us. A species with chemical rockets has threatened the Varathian Empire. They warned us. He laughed again. I have conquered 9 civilizations. I have burned worlds and scattered fleets. And these primitives think they can engage us. Across the galaxy, the reaction was different. In the council chamber, delegates shifted nervously. The Thaxian delegate spoke quietly to the Draxian beside him. They rejected the ultimatum. In 2 minutes. They didn't even debate it. They are fools, the Draxian replied. Or they do not understand what they face. On the Eternal Dominion, Kreeth's laughter faded into cold anger. Communications. Send this message to Earth. Tell them they have made a fatal mistake. Tell them we are advancing, and we will accept nothing less than total surrender. All other responses will result in the destruction of their species. Yes, Admiral, the communications officer began, but Kreeth cut her off. Actually, no. Send nothing. Words are wasted on these creatures. All ships, advance to Earth. Bombardment formation. We will teach these humans the price of defiance. The massive fleet began to move. 847 warships accelerating toward the third planet. They moved in perfect formation, a demonstration of Varathian military discipline. The dreadnoughts formed the center, surrounded by battleships and cruisers, with frigates and destroyers forming a protective screen. It was a formation designed to crush any opposition while protecting the core command vessels. Estimate time to Earth orbit? Kreeth asked. At current speed, 43 minutes. Admiral, excellent. Maintain full sensor scans. If the humans launch any weapons, I want to know immediately. Though I doubt they will be foolish enough to. Admiral, the sensor officer's voice cut through the bridge. Multiple contacts, hundreds of signatures appearing across the system. What? Kreth strode to the sensor station. Where did they come from? Did they use FTL? That's impossible. They don't have the technology. No hyperspace signatures detected, Admiral. They were already there. They were hiding. The signatures are appearing because they're dropping their stealth measures. Sir, they were all around us. In the asteroid belt, near the outer planets, even in Mars's orbital space, we were completely surrounded, and we didn't know it. On the main view screen, tactical displays updated rapidly. Red icons appeared on the plot, dozens of them, then hundreds. Each icon represented a vessel of unknown type, positioned throughout the solar system in what was clearly a pre-planned defensive formation. Across the galaxy, species watched in shock. The Thaxian delegate stood up from his seat. How is this possible? The intelligence reports said they had no deep space capability. Kreth stared at the display, his mind racing. Analysis. What type of ships are these? What are their capabilities? Unknown, Admiral. They don't match any known design. Their energy signatures are unlike any propulsion system in our database. They appear to be using some form of reaction drive, but the efficiency is far beyond what should be possible for a pre-FTL species. They're cold-running, minimal thermal emissions. That's why our scans didn't detect them. How many? Kreth demanded. Still counting, sir. Current estimate is 437 contacts. No correction. 612. They're still appearing as they deactivate stealth systems. 600 ships, against 800 Varathian vessels. It was still favorable odds, but this was nothing like what intelligence had predicted. These humans were not primitives stumbling into first contact. They had been waiting. They had prepared. Sir, we're receiving a new transmission from Earth, the communications officer reported. Play it, Kreth ordered. The same flat, emotionless voice from NORAD filled the bridge. Varathian fleet, you were ordered to maintain position beyond lunar orbit. You advanced into our defensive perimeter. You will now retreat to beyond Mars orbit, or you will be engaged. You have 60 seconds to comply. Kreth's fists clenched. Retreat? They dare order us to retreat? Lock weapons on the nearest human vessel. All ships, prepare to open fire on my command. We will show these animals what happens when you threaten the Empire. Admiral, recommend caution, the tactical officer said carefully. We don't know their capabilities. Perhaps we should. Enough, Kreth roared. We are the Varathian Empire. We do not show caution to primitives. We do not retreat from inferiors. All ships, target the human vessels and fire at will. The Varathian fleet opened fire. Energy weapons blazed across space. Thousands of plasma bolts streaking toward the human ships. It was overwhelming firepower. Enough to vaporize conventional vessels. Enough to shatter shields and melt armor. But the human ships moved. They didn't maneuver like normal spacecraft. There was no slow turn, no gradual acceleration. They moved with sudden, violent bursts of speed, their reaction drives firing in sharp pulses. The Varathian targeting computers, designed to track conventional vessels, couldn't keep up. 90% of the shots missed completely. The few shots that did connect struck human vessels, and their shields absorbed the hits. Not energy shields like the Varathians used, but something else. Ablative armor that burned away under plasma fire, sacrificing outer layers to protect the ship beneath. It was a primitive solution, but it worked. They're scattering, the tactical officer reported, adopting irregular formations, unpredictable movement patterns. Our targeting computers cannot achieve lock, and then the humans fired back. The first shot came from a vessel lurking in Mars's shadow. It wasn't an energy weapon. It was something far simpler and far more terrible. A solid projectile, accelerated to 30% of the speed of light by electromagnetic rails. A kinetic kill vehicle. Nothing but dense metal moving at relativistic speeds. It struck the lead dreadnought Glorious Conquest in the forward section. The shields, designed to dissipate energy weapons, did nothing against solid matter moving at such velocity. The projectile punched through the shields like they didn't exist. Through 2 kilometers of armor plating, through internal compartments, through the reactor core at the heart of the ship, the Glorious Conquest broke apart. Its reactor, breached and destabilized, detonated in a flash of light visible from Earth. 5,000 Varathian crew died instantly. The shockwave damaged 2 nearby cruisers. On the council station, Delegates stared in horror at their view screens. The Draxian delegate spoke in a whisper. They just destroyed a dreadnought. In one shot. How? The humans didn't pause. More kinetic weapons fired from positions across the system. Solid metal, cheap to manufacture but impossibly deadly at relativistic speeds. Vorathian shields couldn't stop them. Vorathian armor couldn't withstand them. Ships that had conquered civilizations died to weapons that would have been considered crude and primitive by galactic standards. Evasive maneuvers, Kreeth ordered. All ships, break formation and scatter. We need to avoid those weapons. But the humans had anticipated this too. As the Vorathian fleet broke apart, human ships accelerated inward, closing the distance. And as they closed, they revealed other weapons. Missiles that maneuvered in ways that should have been impossible. Nuclear-tipped warheads that detonated against Vorathian hulls. Lasers pumped by nuclear explosions that burned through armor at close range. They're everywhere, the sensor officer shouted. Sir, they're using our own debris as cover. They're hiding behind our destroyed ships and ambushing our formations. Kreeth watched in growing horror as his fleet was torn apart. The humans fought like nothing he had ever encountered. No honor, no formation discipline, no predictable tactics. They attacked from unexpected angles, used decoys and electronic warfare to confuse sensors, sacrificed smaller ships to draw Vorathian fire while heavier vessels lined up killing shots. Order the fleet to retreat, Kreeth finally commanded. Back to Mars orbit. We need to regroup and... Sir, hyperspace interference detected. The humans are jamming our FTL drives. What? That's impossible, they don't have that technology. Nevertheless, sir, we cannot jump to hyperspace. Something is preventing our drives from calculating safe coordinates. Every ship that tries to jump receives critical error codes. Kreeth understood then. The humans had studied Vorathian technology. They had listened to broadcasts, captured data, analyzed every weakness, and they had prepared weapons specifically designed to exploit those weaknesses. The Vorathians were trapped in a system with an enemy they had assumed would be helpless prey. The battle unfolded with brutal precision, and every species in the galaxy watched in stunned silence as their understanding of human capabilities shattered with each passing minute. Timestamp 0. The Vorathian fleet, confused and disorganized, attempted to reform their battle lines. Admiral Kreeth's orders echoed across all channels, demanding his ships fall back into standard defensive formation. But standard tactics meant nothing here. The humans had studied Vorathian doctrine for 40 years, had analyzed every battle the Empire had ever broadcast. They knew what Kreeth would do before he did it. Human vessels converged from every angle of the solar system. Ships that had been hiding in the asteroid belt for years activated their drives and accelerated inward. Platforms disguised as dead satellites near Jupiter revealed themselves as weapon emplacements. Vessels buried in the ice of Saturn's rings shook off their cover and joined the assault. The humans had turned their entire solar system into a trap, and the Vorathians had flown directly into it. Timestamp 247. The Vorathian battleship, Pride of Empire, managed to destroy a human frigate with concentrated plasma fire. The human ship broke apart, its crew of 200 dying as their vessel decompressed. For a brief moment, Kreeth felt hope. They could win this. They had superior numbers, superior firepower. The humans were just using surprise tactics. Once the Vorathians adapted, victory would be inevitable. Then 6 human destroyers appeared from behind the debris of the destroyed frigate. The human ship had been bait, deliberately positioned to draw Vorathian fire, to make the Empire's ships reveal their positions and commit their weapons. The moment the Pride of Empire fired, human targeting computers had calculated exact firing solutions. The 6 destroyers opened fire simultaneously, not with energy weapons or kinetic slugs, but with missiles. Dozens of missiles from each ship. Over 100 warheads converging on a single target. The Pride of Empire's point defense systems destroyed many of them, but not enough. Nuclear explosions blossomed across the battleship's hull, overloading shields and cracking armor. The final missile penetrated to the ship's reactor core. The Pride of Empire died in flames, taking its escort of 4 cruisers with it. The shockwave from the battleship's destruction caught the smaller vessels, sending them spinning away with ruptured hulls and dead crew. Across the galaxy, species that had been conquered by the Vorathians watched with a mixture of horror and satisfaction. The Taxian delegate gripped his seat with all four hands, unable to look away from the view screen. The Draxian beside him was trembling, whether from fear or excitement was unclear. "They're using tactics we've never seen," the Draxian whispered. "Every ship operates independently but coordinates perfectly. There's no command hierarchy, no flagship to target. How are they managing this level of coordination without centralized control?" The answer, if the Draxian had known it, was simple. The humans had created an integrated battle network that connected every ship, every weapon platform, every sensor array in the solar system. Information flowed between vessels at the speed of light, every ship seeing what all others saw, every tactical computer working together to find weaknesses in the Vorathian formations. It was a level of coordination that required massive computational power and perfect communication protocols, but it made the human fleet fight as a single organism rather than individual ships. Timestamp 512. Admiral Kreth finally understood that he was not facing primitives. These were soldiers who had prepared for this exact battle for decades. Every weapon they used had been specifically designed to counter Vorathian technology. Every tactic they employed exploited known weaknesses in Imperial doctrine. "All ships, retreat," Kreth ordered, his voice no longer confident but desperate. "Fall back to Mars orbit. Prepare for hyperspace jump." The fleet tried to comply. Vorathian ships turned away from Earth, their engines burning at maximum power. But hyperspace jumps required time. The ship's computers needed 30 seconds to calculate safe coordinates, to plot a course through hyperspace that wouldn't result in catastrophic collision with stellar masses. 30 seconds when the ship had to fly in a straight line, maintaining stable orientation for the jump to work. The humans had known this. It was in the technical specifications the Vorathians themselves had published in their broadcasts, boasting about their rapid strategic repositioning capability. The humans had built their entire battle plan around that 30-second window. As Vorathian ships oriented for jump, human missiles found them. Each ship attempting to flee became a priority target. Kinetic weapons, nuclear warheads, and concentrated laser fire struck vessels at their most vulnerable moment. Ships exploded or tumbled away with their hyperdrives destroyed, unable to escape, unable to fight effectively. "They're not letting us retreat," the tactical officer shouted. "Sir, every ship that tries to jump is being targeted. We've lost 43 vessels in the last minute alone." Kreth stared at the tactical display, watching red icons representing his ships disappear one by one. This was supposed to be a simple subjugation mission, a demonstration of Imperial power. Instead, it was becoming a massacre. Timestamp 833. The Vorathian cruiser Infinite Victory managed to destroy a human frigate that had gotten too close. The cruiser's captain, an experienced officer named Threxus, allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. Finally, a confirmed kill. Finally, proof that the Vorathians could still fight. That satisfaction lasted exactly 4 seconds. 6 human destroyers, which had been pretending to flee, suddenly reversed course. They had used the frigate as bait again, the same tactic that had worked before. The human ships didn't value individual vessels the way the Vorathians did. They saw their own ships as tools, as weapons to be expended if it meant destroying enemy vessels. It was a calculus that horrified the Vorathians, who valued military tradition and individual ship honor. The destroyers opened fire at point-blank range. The Infinite Victory and its 3 escort ships were hit by concentrated fire from multiple directions simultaneously. Shields collapsed, armor melted, reactors went critical. 4 Vorathian ships died in the span of 40 seconds, their wreckage adding to the growing debris field that made the space near Earth increasingly hazardous to navigate. Across the galaxy, species were beginning to understand what they were witnessing. This wasn't just a battle. It was a statement. Humanity was showing the galaxy that technological superiority meant nothing without the will to use it effectively. The Vorathians had better ships, better weapons, better shields, but the humans had planned better, trained better, and were willing to sacrifice more to achieve victory. Timestamp 11:9. The Eternal Dominion, Admiral Kreth's flagship, took a direct hit to its command deck. A kinetic weapon fired from a human battleship struck the forward section of the dreadnought, exactly where intelligence had indicated the Vorathian command centers were located. The projectile, moving at relativistic speed, penetrated through 30 meters of reinforced armor, and detonated its small nuclear warhead inside the command deck. Kreth had one moment to understand what was happening. He saw the ceiling above him crack and buckle. He saw his officers thrown from their stations by the shockwave. He saw flames erupting from ruptured conduits, saw the view screen shatter and the atmosphere begin venting into space. His final transmission, broadcast across all Vorathian channels and heard by every species in the galaxy, was a scream of disbelief and rage. How? You're primitives. Then the Eternal Dominion's reactor core destabilized. The flagship that had led 9 successful subjugation campaigns, that had destroyed countless enemy vessels, that was supposed to be unsinkable, broke into 3 large sections and dozens of smaller fragments. Admiral Kreth and his crew of 12,000 died instantly. The loss of the flagship threw the Vorathian fleet into chaos. Without Kreth's leadership, without the central command and control, individual ship captains had to make their own decisions. Some tried to fight. Some tried to flee. Some tried to surrender, broadcasting pleas in human languages, begging for mercy. The humans offered none. This was not a battle for conquest or resources. This was extermination. Every Vorathian ship in the system had been designated as a target, and the human fleet would not stop until all targets were destroyed. There would be no prisoners, no survivors to report back to the Empire, no witnesses except those watching from across the galaxy. Timestamp 1322. A Vorathian scout ship, the Swift Messenger, managed to break free from the battle. Its captain, a young officer named Keyleth, was piloting the fastest vessel in the fleet. Scout ships were designed for speed over firepower, built to outrun threats and report intelligence. Keyleth pushed his ship's engines beyond safe limits, racing toward the outer system, trying to reach a point far enough from the sun's gravity well to make a safe hyperspace jump. He was going to make it. The human ships were too far away, too engaged with other targets. Another few minutes, and he would be able to jump. He would escape. He would warn the Empire that humanity was not what they seemed, that this had been a trap, that the entire Vorathian understanding of human capabilities was catastrophically wrong. But then a single human ship appeared on his sensors, accelerating from the direction of Saturn's moons. The contact speed was impossible. No ship should be able to accelerate that fast without killing its crew from the forces involved. The human vessel was moving at speeds that would turn organic bodies to paste, pulling maneuvers that would crush bones and rupture organs. Keyleth understood in that moment. The ship chasing him had no crew. It was automated, a drone controlled by computer, capable of maneuvers no living pilot could survive. And it was faster than his scout ship. The drone caught up to the Swift Messenger at timestamp 1358. It didn't use missiles or energy weapons. It simply rammed the Vorathian vessel at tremendous speed, its reinforced prow punching through the scout ship's engines and reactor core. Both vessels exploded in a brief flash of light, adding 2 more debris fields to the solar system. But before the collision, Keyleth had managed to send one final transmission. A burst of data on Vorathian emergency frequencies, a warning to the Empire. A desperate message that would take years to reach Vorathian space through conventional communication channels but would eventually arrive. The message was simple. Earth is not what we thought. They were ready. They were waiting. The entire fleet is lost. Do not come here. For the love of the Empire, do not come here. Timestamp 14. The last Vorathian vessel in the Sol system, a damaged frigate trying to hide in the shadow of Mars, was located by human sensor sweeps and destroyed by concentrated missile fire. The frigate's captain didn't even have time to surrender. Human computers had calculated that the damaged ship could potentially repair its hyperspace drive and escape, so it was prioritized for immediate destruction. The battle was over. 847 Vorathian warships had entered Earth's solar system 4 hours earlier. None remained. The human fleet had lost 63 vessels in the fighting, each one a deliberate sacrifice to destroy multiple enemy ships. The exchange ratio was staggering, over 13-1 in humanity's favor. In the council chamber, delegates sat in absolute silence. The view screens, which had been showing the live feed from the battle, now displayed only debris fields and the triumphant human fleet gathering near Earth orbit. The Vorathian delegate, a minor functionary who had remained on the council station during the battle, sat motionless in his chair, his red eyes dim with shock. Finally, the Thaxian delegate spoke, his voice barely a whisper. The Vorathian Empire has ruled the galaxy for 3 centuries. They have conquered 17 civilizations. They have never been defeated in battle, and a species we thought was primitive just destroyed their entire fleet in 14 minutes. The Draxian delegate turned to look at his colleague. Not 14 minutes. This didn't start 14 minutes ago. This started 40 years ago, when the humans first detected Vorathian broadcasts. They have been preparing for this day for 4 decades. They built their weapons, trained their crews, turned their solar system into a fortress. And then they waited. They waited for us to underestimate them. They waited for the perfect moment to show us who they really are. A new transmission came through, overriding all other communications. It was broadcast on every frequency, in every language spoken by council species. The human ambassador, a woman who identified herself only as Representative Chen, appeared on every view screen in the galaxy. Her message was short and absolute. Earth is closed. Any vessel entering our claimed space will be destroyed without warning. We want nothing from you. We will take nothing from you. Stay away, and you will never see us again. Come closer, and you will share the Vorathians' fate. This is your only warning. The transmission ended, leaving the galaxy to contemplate a new and terrifying reality. Humanity had announced itself to the stars, and they had done so with overwhelming violence. The Galactic Council chamber had never been so full. Every species sent their representatives, and many sent their military commanders as well. They needed to understand what had happened. They needed to know if they were next. The humans had destroyed the most powerful military force in known space in less than 15 minutes. What else could they do? What else were they hiding? High Chancellor Vexith stood before the assembled delegates, but he no longer commanded the room as he once had. His confident posture was gone, replaced by something that looked almost like fear. The Vorathian Empire's invincibility had been shattered, and everyone in the chamber knew it. The Council recognizes the human delegation, Vexith said, his voice lacking its usual thunder. We have requested this session to understand the events that occurred in the Sol system. Representative Chen, humanity has much to explain. A holographic projection appeared in the center of the chamber. Representative Chen stood there, her image life-sized, wearing a simple dark blue uniform with no decorations or medals. She was a small woman by human standards, her hair cut short, her expression completely neutral. She looked like someone who had no need to impress anyone because she held all the power in the conversation. High Chancellor, Chen began, her voice calm and professional. You said we have much to explain. I disagree. We owe you no explanations, but in the interest of preventing future misunderstandings, I will provide one anyway. The Thaxian counselor, speaking carefully, asked the question on every mind. Representative Chen, our intelligence indicated that humanity was decades away from achieving faster-than-light travel. You had no energy shields, no plasma weapons, no graviton technology. How did you defeat a Vorathian fleet that possessed all of these advantages? Chen smiled slightly, though there was no humor in it. Counselor, your question reveals the fundamental mistake everyone made about Earth. You measured our technology and assumed you understood our capabilities. You saw that we used chemical rockets and nuclear weapons and decided we were primitive. You were wrong. She activated a display that showed a timeline, visible to all delegates. 40 years ago, human radio telescopes detected transmissions from outside our solar system, Vorathian military broadcasts. To be specific, fleet movements, tactical discussions, celebration of conquered worlds. We learned that intelligent alien life existed. We also learned that space was not a friendly place. We learned that the dominant power in this region of the galaxy conquered species like ours without hesitation. The delegates shifted uncomfortably. Many of them had participated in council sessions where Vorathian conquests were ratified and approved. They had watched broadcasts of subjugation operations and done nothing. Chen continued. Humanity's governments made a decision that day. Every nation on Earth, all of our separate political entities, agreed on one thing. We would not become another subjugated species. We would prepare, and we would be ready when the Vorathians came for us, because we knew they would eventually come. You spent 40 years preparing for this? The Draxian military observer asked. How did you maintain secrecy for so long? We went dark, Chen explained. We stopped all radio transmissions into deep space. No more broadcasts, no more messages to the stars. From space, it looked like we were exactly what you thought we were. A primitive civilization playing with chemical rockets, slowly building a small orbital infrastructure. What you didn't see was what we were building in secret. The display changed, showing images of massive construction projects in asteroid fields, on the dark side of Earth's moon, in the rings of Saturn. We diverted 15% of global GDP to military development. Every nation contributed. We built shipyards where your sensors couldn't detect them. We mined resources from asteroids and moons. We trained soldiers and designed weapons. Everything was done in secret. Everything was designed to be invisible to your scanners. But the technology, Vexith interrupted. Your weapons should not have been effective against our shields and armor. Kinetic weapons are primitive. Nuclear weapons are crude. How did they work? Chen turned to face the Vorathian delegate directly. Because we studied you, High Chancellor. For 40 years, we listened to your broadcasts. We watched recordings of your battles. We analyzed every piece of information you freely shared with the galaxy. Your fleet compositions, your shield frequencies, your armor specifications, your tactical doctrines. You published all of this information, broadcasting it proudly to demonstrate your superiority. She paused, letting that sink in. You told us exactly how to kill you, and then you were surprised when we did it. Your shields are designed to dissipate energy weapons. They do almost nothing against solid matter at relativistic speeds. Your armor is built to withstand plasma, but it cracks under kinetic impact. Your tactics rely on formation, discipline, and centralized command, so we use decentralized operations and unpredictable attack patterns. We didn't match your technology. We countered it. The Thaxian counselor spoke again, his voice shaking slightly. You said you used kinetic weapons. Accelerating mass to 30% of light speed requires enormous energy. How did you achieve this without energy shields to protect your ships? We didn't need shields like yours, Chen replied. We used ablative armor, cheap to manufacture, effective enough for our purposes. When your plasma weapons hit our vessels, the outer layers burned away, protecting the ship beneath. It's a simple solution, but it worked. Many of our technologies are simple. Counselor, that's their strength. They're reliable, easy to produce in large quantities, and they don't require the exotic materials your advanced systems need. She advanced the display again, showing schematics of human vessels. Our ships are built around the principle of redundancy and simplicity. If a system fails, there are backups. If a component is damaged, it can be quickly replaced. Our vessels are not elegant or sophisticated by your standards, but they are effective. And we built hundreds of them in secret over 4 decades. The delegates were beginning to understand the scope of what humanity had accomplished. An entire species, unified by external threat, had transformed their world into a military fortress without anyone in the galaxy noticing. It was unprecedented. A delegate from a small species called the Yelanks asked a question in a trembling voice. Representative Chen, your tactics in the battle were brutal. You used your own ships as bait. Sacrificed crews deliberately to destroy Vorathian vessels. You showed no mercy, took no prisoners. Is this how humanity conducts war? Chen's expression didn't change. Yes, when we fight to win. We don't fight for honor or glory. We fight to survive. Every human crew that went into that battle knew they might not come back. They volunteered anyway, because they understood what was at stake. If the Vorathians had won, Earth would have been subjugated. Our species would have spent generations serving the Empire. We chose death over slavery. She looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of delegates from species that had accepted Vorathian rule. I know some of you think we were cruel, but consider this. We offered Admiral Kreth a chance to retreat. We warned him to stay beyond lunar orbit. He advanced anyway, confident in his superiority. He thought we were primitives who would panic and surrender. He was wrong, and his fleet paid the price for his arrogance. The Draxian observer leaned forward. What about your stealth technology? How did you hide hundreds of ships from Vorathian sensors? Basic thermodynamics, Chen answered. We built cold-running ships, minimal emissions, passive sensors only until we were ready to fight. We positioned vessels in locations your scanners wouldn't carefully examine. The asteroid belt, the rings of Saturn, the dark side of our moon. We hid in plain sight, disguised as debris or dormant satellites. You were looking for advanced ships with active sensors and weapons. You weren't looking for quiet, patient hunters waiting for the perfect moment to strike. She smiled grimly. You thought technology was the only measure of capability, but we also used patience, planning, and discipline. We spent 40 years watching and learning. We became experts on Vorathian military operations without firing a single shot. When the battle came, we knew what you would do before you did it. High Chancellor Vexith's red eyes glowed with barely contained anger. You speak of this as if you were defending yourselves, but you destroyed an entire fleet. 12,000 Vorathian warriors died in that battle. Their only crime was following orders to expand the empire. Chen turned to face him fully, and her voice became cold. Their crime was attempting to conquer my world, High Chancellor. They came to Earth with 800 warships and an ultimatum that offered only submission or destruction. They threatened to burn our cities if we resisted. What did you expect us to do? Welcome them with celebrations? Thank them for the opportunity to serve the Empire? The chamber fell silent. Vexith had no response. Chen continued, her voice rising slightly with barely controlled anger. And let me address something else. For 40 years, we listened to Galactic Council broadcasts. We heard representatives from 47 species discuss Vorathian conquests. We heard debates about subjugation operations. We heard votes to ratify the incorporation of conquered worlds. Not once did we hear any species object. Not once did we hear anyone suggest that the Vorathians should be stopped. She looked around the chamber, and many delegates could not meet her gaze. You all knew what the Empire was doing. You all watched as they conquered species after species. And you did nothing. You were too afraid, too weak, or too comfortable with the status quo to resist. So don't stand there and lecture us about the lives we took in defense of our freedom. You had 40 years to build something better than the Vorathian Empire. You chose to accept subjugation instead. The Thaxian counselor spoke quietly. You are right, Representative Chen. We should have done more. We should have resisted. But the Vorathian Empire was too powerful. No single species could stand against them. Then you should have worked together, Chen replied sharply. 47 species in this council. Billions of beings across thousands of worlds. If you had united against the Vorathians 3 centuries ago, the Empire would never have grown so powerful. But you didn't. You accepted peace through submission rather than fighting for real freedom. She let that accusation hang in the air for a moment before continuing in a calmer tone. Earth will not make that mistake. We will not join your council. We will not participate in your politics. We will not rely on others for our defense. We are claiming our solar system and a 50-light-year exclusion zone around it. Any vessel that enters without explicit permission will be destroyed. No exceptions. No second chances. 50 light-years? Vexith protested. That territory includes 17 star systems. You cannot possibly defend such a large area. Chen smiled, and this time there was genuine amusement in her expression. Can't we, High Chancellor? You thought we couldn't defend our solar system either. You thought 800 warships would be enough to conquer us. How did that work out? She activated the display once more, showing a map of space around Earth. Red zones marked the exclusion area. For 40 years, you watched our solar system and saw primitive chemical rockets. You never detected our warship construction. You never found our defensive platforms. You never realized we were preparing for war. What makes you think you know what we've built in neighboring star systems? The implication sent a wave of fear through the chamber. If humans had been building military infrastructure in secret for 40 years in their own solar system, what had they built in nearby star systems? How far did their preparations extend? We have placed automated defense platforms throughout the exclusion zone, Chen said. They've been there for 20 years. You never saw them because you weren't looking. These platforms are programmed to destroy any unauthorized vessel. They don't negotiate. They don't warn. They just kill. She deactivated the display and faced the assembled delegates. Humanity is withdrawing from galactic affairs. We don't want your trade. We don't want your alliances. We don't want your politics. All we want is to be left alone. Stay out of our space, and you'll never see us again. Cross into our territory, and you'll join the Vorathians. What if we need help? A small voice asked. It was a delegate from the Plenix, a species that had been conquered by the Vorathians 200 years ago. What if other species try to expand their empires now that the Vorathians are weakened? Will you help us? Chen looked at the Plenix delegate with something that might have been sympathy. No. Earth's policy is isolation and self-defense. We will not intervene in galactic conflicts. We will not be your saviors. You need to save yourselves. Build your own defenses. Form your own alliances. Create the peaceful galaxy you claim to want. But do it without us. She paused, then added quietly, I'm sorry, but humanity learned a harsh lesson. We cannot trust other species to protect us. We cannot rely on councils or agreements. The only security is self-reliance. That's why Earth is closed. The holographic projection began to fade. Before it disappeared completely, Chen delivered one final message. This is the only official communication humanity will have with the Galactic Council. Do not attempt to contact us. Do not send ambassadors or trade delegations. Do not test our exclusion zone. We have said everything that needs to be said. Remember what happened to the Vorathian 7th Fleet. And stay away. The projection vanished, leaving the council chamber in stunned silence. 6 months had passed since the 14-minute war, and the galaxy had transformed in ways that no one could have predicted. The Vorathian Empire, which had stood for 3 centuries as the dominant power in known space, was collapsing. Without their military strength to enforce control, without the fear that had kept subjugated species obedient, the empire fragmented into chaos. The first world to rebel was Draxus. The Draxian people had been conquered 140 years ago, their natural military strength suppressed by Vorathian occupation forces. When news of the 7th Fleet's destruction reached Draxus, the planetary government declared independence within hours. Vorathian administrators were expelled peacefully, and the Draxians began building their own defense fleet using designs they had secretly preserved from before the conquest. Other worlds followed quickly. Thaxia, Plenix, Yelenx, and a dozen other species declared their freedom. Some transitions were peaceful, others were violent, as local Vorathian garrison forces tried to maintain control and failed. The Empire tried to respond, sending fleets to retake rebellious worlds, but their forces were stretched too thin. With the 7th Fleet gone and military resources committed to holding core territories, the Vorathians couldn't suppress multiple uprisings simultaneously. Within 3 months, the Vorathian Empire had lost half its territory. The remaining Vorathian worlds split into factions, each claiming to be the legitimate successor to the Empire. Civil war erupted as different Vorathian military commanders fought each other for control of what remained. The species that had conquered 17 civilizations was tearing itself apart. The Galactic Council, already weakened by its failure to predict or prevent the human threat, became irrelevant almost overnight. Member species stopped attending sessions. The Council Station, once a symbol of galactic unity, became a ghost town. Representatives who did show up spent their time arguing about blame and responsibility, rather than addressing the chaos spreading across the galaxy. The Thaxian counselor, one of the few who still attended sessions regularly, stood before the nearly empty chamber and spoke to whoever was listening. We failed. All of us. We allowed the Vorathians to build an empire based on fear and conquest. We thought it brought stability. We thought it brought peace. But it was a false peace, maintained only by the threat of violence. And when someone finally stood up to that violence and won, the entire structure collapsed. In the back of the chamber, the Draxian military observer nodded in agreement. The galaxy is entering an arms race now. Every species that can afford it is building warships. Everyone is studying the human tactics, trying to understand how they defeated the Vorathians so easily. Everyone is afraid that they might be next on someone's conquest list. Can you blame them? The Thaxian replied. The humans showed us that technological superiority means nothing if you lack the will and planning to use it effectively. They also showed us that isolation and self-defense are more reliable than treaties and councils. Why would any species trust the council to protect them after we failed so completely to see the threat Earth posed? The Draxian had no answer to that. But while the rest of the galaxy descended into paranoia and conflict, Earth's exclusion zone remained absolutely quiet. No ships entered. No communications came from human space. Long-range sensors detected activity around Earth's sun, but at such distances it was impossible to determine what the humans were building. Massive structures appeared in orbit around Jupiter. Strange energy signatures were detected near Saturn. Ships moved between planets within the Sol system, but none ventured beyond the 50 light-year exclusion zone. Species began to speculate. Were the humans building colony ships? Were they constructing weapons platforms that could strike targets across the galaxy? Were they developing new technologies that would make them even more dangerous? The terrifying truth was that nobody knew, and nobody dared get close enough to find out. A small exploration vessel from the Plenix homeworld made the mistake of entering the exclusion zone, searching for habitable planets to colonize. The ship was 51 light-years from Earth when it crossed the boundary. There was no warning, no communication. Automated defense platforms that had been hiding in the darkness activated and destroyed the Plenix ship with kinetic weapons. The entire crew of 37 died instantly. The message was clear. Earth had meant every word. The exclusion zone was absolute. On the Varathian successor state of Vexith's faction, what remained of the military high command met in emergency session. They had lost contact with 17 garrison fleets. Their economy was collapsing as former subjugated species stopped sending tribute, and civil war was draining their remaining resources. But worse than all of that was the fear that the humans might expand beyond their exclusion zone. What if they decide to attack us? One commander asked. What if they see the Empire's weakness and decide to eliminate us completely? They won't, replied Admiral Thraxus, one of the few senior officers who had survived the political purges following the 7th Fleet's destruction. The humans were very clear. They want isolation. They want to be left alone. As long as we don't enter their territory, they have no reason to come after us. But what if other species attack us? Another commander protested. What if the Draxians decide to strike back for their conquest? Will the humans help us? Thraxus laughed bitterly. Help us? Did you listen to Representative Chen's speech? She said Earth would not intervene in galactic conflicts. We are on our own. We created this situation by underestimating them, and now we must live with the consequences. He pulled up a star chart showing the region of space around Earth. The 50 light-year exclusion zone was marked in red, an enormous sphere of space that was now completely off-limits to the rest of the galaxy. The humans have claimed more than territory. They've claimed independence from the galactic order. They've shown that it's possible to stand alone, to defend yourself without treaties or alliances. And now every species in the galaxy is trying to copy them. Deep in space, far from any inhabited world, a secret meeting took place. Representatives from 7 species gathered aboard a neutral vessel, meeting without official approval from their governments. They called themselves the Liberation Coalition, and they had a radical idea. The Draxian representative spoke first. We all know why we're here. The Varathian Empire is finished. The Galactic Council is useless. The humans have shown us that self-reliance and strength are the only real security. But we cannot all become Earth. We do not have 40 years to prepare. We do not have their unity or their resources. Then we work together, said the Thaxian representative. We pool our resources, share technology, build a defensive alliance that can protect us from anyone who tries to build a new empire. But the humans, the Plenix representative interrupted. What if they see us as a threat? What if they decide that a unified alliance is dangerous to their security? Then we make it clear that we are not a threat to them. The Draxian replied. We respect their exclusion zone absolutely. We make no attempts to contact them or gather intelligence on their activities. We prove through our actions that we want the same thing they do. Peace through strength and the right to self-determination. Over the following months, the Liberation Coalition grew. Species joined quietly, sharing defensive technologies and coordinating military production. They adopted some human tactics, building smaller automated defense platforms, focusing on redundancy and simplicity over technological sophistication. They studied the Battle of Sol system obsessively, learning every lesson they could from humanity's victory. But they also did something the humans had not done. They shared their knowledge openly with each other. They built trust through cooperation. They created something that the Galactic Council had never been, a true alliance of equals working toward mutual defense. On Earth, in the Unified Defense Command Center, Representative Chen sat with her senior staff, reviewing intelligence reports from beyond the exclusion zone. They had sensors positioned at the edge of their claimed space, monitoring galactic activities from a distance. The galaxy is reorganizing, her intelligence chief reported. The Vorithian Empire is effectively dead. Multiple successor states are fighting for control of what remains. Meanwhile, at least 15 species have formed defensive alliances. The largest group calls themselves the Liberation Coalition. They seem to be adopting some of our tactical doctrines. Good, Chen replied. Let them build their own defenses. Let them learn to protect themselves. That's what we wanted, isn't it? A galaxy where species aren't subjugated by empires? But what if one of these alliances becomes powerful enough to threaten us? A military advisor asked. What if they unite the galaxy against Earth? Chen pulled up a display showing the expansion of human infrastructure throughout the Sol system. Massive orbital habitats around Earth, mining operations on asteroids, fusion power plants on the moons of Jupiter, research stations throughout the system, construction facilities that were building the next generation of defensive platforms and warships. Let them try, she said calmly. We destroyed the Vorathian 7th Fleet in 14 minutes using technologies we developed 40 years ago. Do you think we've been standing still since then? Do you think we haven't continued to innovate and improve? She zoomed the display to show structures being built in the outer reaches of the solar system. Ships using new propulsion systems. Weapons platforms with capabilities far beyond what had been used against the Vorathians. Research into technologies that were still theoretical but showed incredible promise. The Vorathians made a mistake, Chen continued. They thought the battle would be won by whoever had the most advanced technology. But battles are won by whoever prepares better, fights smarter, and refuses to give up. We prepared for 40 years to defeat the Vorathians. We've been preparing for 6 months since then to defeat whoever might come next. A young officer spoke up hesitantly. Ma'am, some people are asking if we're preparing for the wrong thing. The galaxy is reorganizing into something that might be better than the Empire. Species are forming voluntary alliances instead of conquest-based empires. Maybe we should reconsider our isolation policy. Maybe we could help guide the galaxy toward something better. Chen turned to look at the officer, her expression softening slightly. I understand the impulse to help. I really do. But Earth's policy is firm for good reasons. The moment we involve ourselves in galactic politics, we become a target. Every species will either want our protection or fear our power. We'll be drawn into conflicts, forced to choose sides, pressured to use our military strength for others' benefit. She stood and walked to the window, looking out at the blue and green planet below. Our ancestors spent centuries fighting each other over territory, resources, and ideology. We nearly destroyed our own world multiple times with nuclear weapons. We only united when we faced an external threat that endangered our entire species. That unity is precious and fragile. If we start involving ourselves in galactic conflicts, we risk breaking it. So we just watch? The officer asked. We let the galaxy struggle and fight, and potentially fall into another empire. And we do nothing? We protect ourselves, Chen corrected. We maintain our strength, our unity, and our independence. We prove that it's possible to survive in a hostile galaxy through self-reliance. And by doing that, we provide an example for other species. Not through intervention or guidance, but through demonstration. We show that you don't need to conquer others to be secure. You don't need to join empires or councils. You need to build your own strength and defend your own freedom. She returned to her seat and pulled up long-range sensor data from the edge of the exclusion zone. Look at this. 3 different alliances have formed in the past month. Species that were conquered by the Vorathians are working together, building defensive networks, sharing technology. They're doing exactly what we hoped they would do. They're learning to protect themselves. But will it last? The intelligence chief asked. History suggests that alliances break apart under pressure. What happens when these species start competing for resources or territory? What happens when old grudges resurface? Then they'll deal with it, Chen replied. It's not our problem. Earth has claimed what we need to survive and thrive. We have 17 star systems within our exclusion zone. More than enough space to expand our civilization for centuries. We have the resources, the territory, and the defensive capability to remain independent. That's all we need. She looked around at her staff, seeing the doubt in some of their faces. I know some of you think we're being selfish, but consider the alternative. If we involve ourselves in galactic politics, How long before some species asks us to intervene in their conflict? How long before we're expected to take sides in wars that aren't ours? How long before our military strength is seen as a resource to be used, rather than a deterrent to be respected? The humans were clear, she continued. We fight to survive, not to conquer. We defend what's ours, not what someone else thinks we should protect. And by maintaining that policy absolutely, we avoid becoming what the Vorathians were. We avoid becoming another empire that subjugates others in the name of peace or stability. Weeks turned into months, and the galaxy continued to evolve without Earth's participation. The Liberation Coalition expanded to include 23 species, becoming a significant military and economic power. Vorathian successor states continued to fight each other, weakening themselves further. New trade routes emerged as species started dealing directly with each other rather than through imperial intermediaries. And throughout it all, Earth's exclusion zone remained absolutely closed. No ships entered, no communications emerged. The humans had withdrawn from galactic affairs completely, leaving the rest of the galaxy to wonder what they were doing in their isolation. Some species saw Earth as a missed opportunity. If the humans had joined the galaxy, if they had shared their tactical knowledge and military strength, perhaps a better galactic order could have been built quickly and efficiently. Others saw Earth's isolation as wisdom. By refusing to participate in galactic politics, the humans avoided being corrupted by power or drawn into endless conflicts. But everyone agreed on one thing. The galaxy had changed forever. The Vorathian Empire's fall had proven that no power was invincible. Earth's victory had demonstrated that technological superiority could be overcome by superior planning and will. And humanity's isolation had shown that it was possible to survive without joining the great game of galactic politics. In the end, Earth had achieved exactly what it wanted. Security through strength, independence through self-reliance, and peace through the clear message that it was far too dangerous to threaten. The galaxy learned to fear the silent sphere of space around Earth's sun. They learned that beyond that boundary lay a species that would not negotiate, would not compromise, and would not hesitate to destroy anyone who crossed them. And they learned to stay away. In the Unified Defense Command Center, Representative Chen reviewed the latest intelligence reports and allowed herself a small smile. The strategy had worked. Earth was safe. Humanity was free. And the galaxy, for better or worse, would have to find its own path forward without them. Ma'am? An aide approached quietly. The Liberation Coalition has sent another request for diplomatic contact. They're asking if Earth would consider sharing defensive technologies, even on a limited basis. Chen shook her head. Standard response. Earth's position has not changed. We appreciate their respect for our exclusion zone, but we will not engage in diplomatic relations or technology sharing. Suggest they continue developing their own innovations. They've done well so far without our help. The aide nodded and left to compose the response. Chen turned back to her displays, watching as humanity continued to build, to grow, to strengthen itself within the safety of its claimed space. Earth was closed, and it would remain closed for as long as necessary, perhaps forever, because humanity had learned the hardest lesson the galaxy had to offer. In the end, you could only truly rely on yourself. Treaties could be broken, alliances could fail, but strength, properly built and carefully maintained, would endure. The Vorathian Empire had fallen in 14 minutes. Their 3-century reign had ended.